The podcast that floats down here.
Tonight we are discussing Part 2, June of 1958, Chapter 9, Cleaning Up. This chapter was 47 pages and was 4.31% of the book. Benji, tell us what happened.
In 1985, high above New York State, Bev has a nice casual conversation with a fellow plane passenger. After leaving Tom, Beverly made her way to her friend Kay's house. Kay is overjoyed.
Bev has left Tom and has given her money for travel. Beverly remembers the poem she got in the mail in summer of 1958. She can't remember who sent it, but she thinks it might have been Bill Denborough, who she loved. She also remembers her first date, a trip to the movies with Richie and Ben. She considers it a first date because Richie paid for the tickets. The night of her date, as she gets ready for bed, Beverly hears voices in the bathroom drain saying, "We float. We change." The drain erupts in a fountain of blood. Beverly screams, attracting the ear of her father, Al. He punches her in the stomach and tells her she needs to grow up. Beverly realizes he can't see the blood covering the whole room. Only when Beverly tells him she thinks she saw a spider in the drain does his attitude towards her soften. He hugs her goodnight. The next morning, Beverly sees that the blood has not disappeared overnight. She cooks her dad's breakfast and helps her mother clean the apartment. Her mother mops the bathroom floor and doesn't see the blood either. Before she leaves for work, Marsh asks Beverly if she made her father angry last night and asks, "Does he ever touch you?" Beverly, confused, doesn't know what she means. Beverly finds Ben and Eddie pitching pennies with Bradley Donovan in an alley. When Beverly wins the game, Bradley calls her a little Biff and her mother a whore, even though she offers to give his pennies back. To comfort Beverly, the other two pool their pennies and buy milkshakes. Stan shows up and they all go to Beverly to investigate the bathroom. The boys see the blood and they help Beverly clean it up. Stan pays for them to take their dirty rags to the laundromat. While they wait, the boys tell Beverly about their experiences with it. Stan reveals while birdwatching, he entered the old standpipe and ended up getting trapped inside. And while in there, he was stalked by the bodies of drowned boys. He escaped the bodies and the standpipes by shouting the name of birds, causing the door to open and the bodies to back away. The losers talk about what to do about it and decide Bill will know what to do. Beverly returns home with the clean rags. Out of curiosity, she runs her father's tape measure down the bathroom sink drain. Something pulls it to its full 18-foot length. A voice from the drain says, "You can't fight us. You'll die if you try." And the tape measure suddenly slops back into its case. Beverly cleans the blood and muck off it and burns the two rags she used. Then she sits on the back steps and cries.
All right, so we're going to get into our notes on this chapter. Benji, you want to start us off? What was your first kind of thought on as you were reading through Beverly and a little bit of Stan?
A little bit of Stan, a little bit of Beverly. My first thought was Bev being glad Kay wasn't wearing orange pom-poms on her shoes. They were, I think, red, not orange, and she was happy for some reason. I thought that was just a nice little, I don't think she realizes, I don't know if her memory has all returned yet, and obviously it hasn't because there's been...
It definitely hasn't.
Yeah, there's been some mentions of,
not Ben?
Yeah, not...
Specifically not Ben?
Yeah. And so it's kind of one of those, situations of I'd like to, where you get those little hints and little glimpses of her memories from her childhood and everything like that. And including like when she was saying something about her husband, about, the name, Tom, thank you. Anyway, Tom hitting her and reminded her of a wild animal, and she meant her father, and it kind of leads into everything that happened further. So it's like the history or the memories that are coming back.
I personally like Kay a lot. I feel like she's a very strong female character, very empowered, especially for 1985, which typically women, you know, in that era
Didn't have the opportunity necessarily.
Well, she also became in it said 1972, which is also when like the Ruth Bader Ginsburg started having her kind of show of force coming up and getting her popularity and everything built. So it kind of mirrors right when the kind of second wave feminism popped up in the 70s.
It also mentions how she had that and then went further, and gained and lost popularity because she kept going with it. She went further with it, which the times weren't ready for her to go further with, and they vilified her for getting money out of the guy when
capitalism and feminism are opposites, you know,
right? And so she made her money, and that's not a strike against her. She got her pay.
I think my point with it is so often those type of characters, especially in that era, were characterized as, oh, the bitch. So most of the time, that's how they're viewed in society. And I really like that Stephen King put that in there, is like by saying
so
people
blatant.
thought of her this way,
right?
But you can tell he didn't think of her this way. He definitely approved of her lifestyle and her strength.
He makes it ironic, like in the fact that, oh, this is the media perception of what she is, but you know what? Fuck you. This is how it actually is, and this is how the character, even if you might not you might not agree with it, this is what it is, and you know what? Fuck you. Like, I like the way that he did that, for sure.
Yeah.
Absolutely. Because so often those kind of women get, like you said, vilified, but not just in, like, that's
and
how
swept
they're
under the rug,
treated.
right?
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
So I appreciated her. I also liked about Kay that she did the typical friend of the victim thing by celebrating the fact that Bev finally left, because so often when you know someone like that, you watch and
when you
help.
finally get the opportunity to help,
but
right
even
way.
as like as the friend, you can't always say that. You can't always give the full opinion, because
the right thing is not the easy thing, or even the right thing sometimes to say.
Right. Because it's better to maintain our friendship so that I can be here for you when you need me and me to watch
because
that.
who else is going to be here for you at this point?
Because if I tell you what I really think, you're not going to be my friend anymore. And honey, you need me to be your friend.
Honey,
so that
you need me.
You do. And the way she rejoices about, thank God you finally left that asshole.
Instantly.
Yes.
She gets it.
And that goes right into when Beverly starts saying, it was my fault mostly. And she's like, shut
if you fucking say that
up.
again, I hope you fucking die. Like, she's not saying that, but that's what she's getting at.
And now in Beverly's defense on that line, as the victim, I can understand why she would think it is her fault, because the cigarette thing, because, you know, her telling him, oh, I'm going to go meet an old boyfriend and this and that. So in her head, as the perpetual abused, submissive partner, it was her fault for setting him off again. You know, so she's not technically wrong in her head. Now, you know what I'm saying?
Yeah.
You know, like morally and ethically and everything, she's wrong. She is wrong. But in her head,
No, morally and ethically, she's fine. I'm saying she's not.
No, she's wrong for saying that's her fault. So
my point is, and I agree with you, Benji, that Beverly thinks it's true because it's true for her perspective, but that doesn't make it okay. And that's, I think, Kay's point of view. Yeah, honey, I know you've always thought that, but what you need to realize is you are never going to have to say that again. And it's so much ingrained into who she is, both as a wife and as a daughter, that she doesn't know any different. Her truth, her view of the world is so skewed that she needs a Kay to say.
Kay is the best fucking person for her.
Absolutely. The line is, if you're done with Tom, you ought to be done with the lies as well.
Yep.
And the way Kay got so angry with her for that, I have been that friend. Not quite to this extent, but I have been that friend of just stop lying to yourself.
Be better for yourself, because we'll all be better for that. It's stop fucking around.
Yeah.
Like I have a hard time with dishonesty in general. Like that's a personal choice that I've made. I don't know. I have no time for dishonesty. Honesty is the only policy, and it's hard to do. Doing the right thing is not the easy thing. And something where it's this blatant and this disruptive to your normal life, that's a hard choice to make. And it's impossible for Bev to just make that mental switch on a life choice that she's been forced into. She grew up being forced into well, you're being abused and that's what you've gotten used to, so that's normal. And then you married a guy who abuses you, and that's normal, and you've made the excuses and you've made the choices that you can to make no one else worry about you. But guess what? Everyone has noticed, and that's what Kay is getting at.
My other thought on this is that this book was written more than 30 years ago, and yet this is absolutely a relevant topic. The Me Too movement that started with Harvey Weinstein and has domino effect.
Yeah, taken down many.
This has been happening for years. This happened 20 years ago with the Clarence Thomas trials when he was up for Supreme Court. And who was made to take the blame for it was his victim. She had to be grilled by the Senate. And I think that's something a lot of the time men who do it know it because they get away with it. And men who don't do it don't realize it's common. It happens to everybody. It happens in all walks of life. It doesn't just happen in the presidency. It doesn't just happen in Hollywood. It happens when I walk down the street. It happens to people working in a business with the coworkers. This kind of thing happens. And yes, Beverly's was more extensive than some of the one or two things that occurred for a lot of people, but it's the same idea of, I can't change this. I can't say anything because what's going to happen if I say anything? I'm going to lose my job. I'm going to lose my friends. It affects the victim's life way more than it affects the assailant.
Sure. So, and I'm definitely not one for the hashtag not all men movement. I'm not someone that supports, well, yeah, there are bad people, but that's not everybody. Like it's case by case. That's just what it is. And there's never going to be a chance where, it's not everybody that's that way, but it's the social norm that I think is part of the problem. And there is no good way of dealing with it. And unfortunately, without talking about it, there's no good way of figuring out what the social norm should be these days. It's different than what it was 2,000 years ago. Yep. It's different than what it was 1,000 years ago. It's different than what 100. It was 50 years ago. And it takes just saying it out loud. Like, hey, these are my feelings. Is that okay? Like, there's no right answer at this point. And with social media, it's an entirely different monster than it was.
Yeah. No, I completely agree with you. The one point I was going to go with what you're saying is, think about this. Less than 100 years ago, women in this country did not even have the right to vote. So to overcome, and I'm not saying women have to overcome a shit ton that we as guys put them through. They have to overcome, and they have a lot less time frame than what we had. We had fucking, let's say, 1,000 years reign, if not more, if not millennia. I know, I know multiples, but they've had 100 years of quote unquote equality. So it's kind of one of those of, for us as men, and I'm not saying, trying to justify or, anything but, side with victims on this. We have to realize, hey, even it's ingrained into the natural cause that, hey, women weren't as equal and this and that. It's bullshit. And that's where, the level needs to step up. But in like Beverly's case, she made that first step. Finally, she reached out for help. She asked. She took that step, and you saw the relief from Kay, who was willing to give her, $1,000 cash right then and there? Just boom, here. And, she even kind of going in the next scene that was like, why don't you take the airplane and this and that? Bev knew. Tom's going to go there. I'm not going to, she was using her brain, using her intelligence of this is the way it needs to be done because I'm going to avoid, any possible situation.
All right. So moving on, does anybody else have any other comments about old Bev, if you will, 1985 Bev.
I really liked the Bev interacting with the guy in the plane. I liked her being able to separate herself from her what has become her normal life and her normal reactions to shittiness, I think is the best way to say it. Yeah. And how she was able to start seeing that, yeah, this sucks. And she was still making excuses like, oh, I slammed my hand in the car door at the airport. But she gave the guy a chance to be nice to her, and she started accepting his, I want to say, advances in a decent way. But then she, because she was clearly falling under the, I don't even know how to say it. Well, no, not that at all. It's not a rebound. Okay. It's when we see them as kids, they fall under silliness like all the fucking time.
Yeah.
They laugh a lot.
They laugh uncontrollably at not that funny things all the time. And she loses her fucking mind about a goose or a duck being on the side of the fucking plane. And that's the way that she's starting to remember. She definitely doesn't remember everything, because for me, like, the most heartbreaking thing is she doesn't remember Ben at all. And we know that how hung up.
No, she does.
Nope.
Yep.
She never says Ben's name.
My first date was with Richie. It was with two boys. It was with Richie and Ben.
Not Ben. She does not say Ben's name. It's with Richie and another boy. She trust me. Okay, I checked.
Okay.
She very specifically does not remember Ben at this point. Melissa?
She remembers his name.
Yeah.
Does she?
Only it was the names instead of bodies that were turning up. Names she hadn't thought of in years. Ben Hanscom, Richie Tozier, Greta Bowie, Henry Bowers, Eddie Kasprek, Bill Denbrough, especially Bill.
We'll get back to Greta. We'll get back to that because I have questions. That's the first time that name has ever been thrown out there. And right. But my point being, she doesn't remember that it's Ben who writes the poem. And she gives all attribution to Bill being the one that does so. Even though we saw last chapter or 2 chapters ago that Beverly was pretty sure that it was Ben that wrote it. And then there's also the time at the date, her first date with Richie Tozier, she says with another boy. She does not say Ben's name there.
Okay.
So that's where it's like,
man.
She thinks suddenly of getting ready for bed the night after Richie and Ben took her to see those 2 horror movies after her first date.
That's not the line that there's a line before that, I think, where she says she remembers her first date.
It was with 2 boys.
It's with Richie and another boy, is the way that she says it. She, like, almost seems to go out of her way not to remember him. Not that she goes out of her way, but, like, it's specifically him that she does remember a couple different times that I picked up on. I'm not saying that I'm right, but I noticed that she clearly didn't mention him, where everything that we've seen from Ben's perspective is she's everything to him. It's that dichotomy of perception.
It's basically the he loves her, she loves the other guy doesn't give a shit, kind of mentality that it's kind of a trope in some writing, but it's not.
Yeah, I fucking hate it.
But in this one, it's not super overdone. It's actually fairly well done, even for what we've seen so far. My feeling on it, you can kind of tell you're right. She's having the memories of the fun times. And honestly, whenever you're thinking of fun times, you're going to think of Richie Tozier. That's number one, because he's the youngster. He's the, guy who brings all the chucks, and everything. And then she thinks back, and she's already thought about her first boyfriend, Bill Denbrough, because she mentioned him to Tom.
Yeah,
so it's at this point she might not remember Ben per se or remember what he looks like exactly, but she's she does remember him, but he doesn't stick out as much, at this point.
All right, so we're gonna move on, and she is in the bathroom, and it kind of explodes on her after talking to her in dead people voices.
So I did have one thought on this one. Is it? I can't say it's misogynistic or tropey or whatever, but. Come on, isn't it kind of hidden on the nose that the pubescent girl, the thing she's most scared of is blood? Just, with natural, women's, what happens on the period cycle and everything like that. Somebody who's going right through that situation. yeah, I guess I'm not a woman, never, been through that. So it could be the fear, but it just seems like it kind of hit the head on the nose of, I don't know, kind of obvious kind of thing. Does any of that make sense, Melissa, or am I?
My question for you is, if you had heard a bunch of people who you knew were dead talking to you out of the drain and blood spewed at you, you'd be cool?
No, and the drain
I
talking.
think it's less the blood.
But, okay.
I see what you're going for, but I think that's less of the thing that really fucking creeps her out. It's
No, in the long term though, I think it is more the blood, because the blood's a reminder.
The blood's a reminder.
And so
it's
fine.
the voices that make it fucked up.
And the blood's fucking invisible, and no one else can see it.
Yes,
and
no,
so
that's the disconcerting thing.
Don't get me wrong.
Sure.
I get that. It's
Trust me, I have questions about that. I have fucking questions.
Yeah. I mean, it's a great
fucking questions.
It's a great scene, and it's just kind of one of those. It was just a thought I had. Like, of course, why couldn't say Eddie be the one to have the blood shootout, or Bill? It has to be the girl who is probably going through something similar or in that situation, and that's kind of, I guess, where my point is.
I feel like she's already past that. Personally,
okay,
I'm not. I don't know, but I feel like she's already past that, and her personal life is so disjointed and fucked up in general. I don't think that she would be the one that would worry about something like that.
That's fair.
I think because
let's also think about it as she's not just a girl; she's a kid. Just like all the other ones are kids. She's a kid who gets her ass beat by her dad a lot. So for her, blood might be scary. Not because she's a girl, but because she gets fucking hit all the time.
And I get that.
I don't think the period thing
is again, like you said, it was just a thought that popped out.
I'm not saying that you're entirely wrong, but I feel like we have no indication, at least from what I read, that was something that she was thinking about, other than the mentions of budding breasts and things like that, where there were spring apples. Like she mentions those things, but I always have a hard time separating what we're told as the reader from what the characters are experiencing. What the narrator is saying, I feel like, is what the characters are thinking at that time. And I don't think the narrator lies to us. Is a typical thing that I follow until proven otherwise.
As a girl who has periods.
Yeah, and both of us, Benji and I, are neither girls.
No.
Right. Just because we have periods, Benj, doesn't mean that that's like our main focus.
I
we don't
understand
see the world through a lens of blood because once a month our uterus decides to shed.
His main point was being like, oh, this is one of the first times that this happens.
And it's also another storyline trope that a lot of I've seen writers or seen people do, where they focus in that age range where it's your first one or close to your first one. That's what your focus is on. And I guess that's also, and not just, from the movies and stuff. I've seen other mediums, TV, television, movies, where they've focused on that issue of the prepubescent or the girl going right into it, right about to start. And so that's where I guess my mentality is coming from. I'm not saying it's what it actually is.
Let her finish her thought on that. I'm sorry I cut you off, Melissa.
No, you're fine. My response to Benji would be, how many of those are written by men?
And I'm sure
99%.
Yes.
This is my point, because I guarantee you, if you get a version written by a female, it's going to look and sound a lot different, which is one of my favorite things about Stephen King, is that you don't realize it's a dude trying to write a chick.
He writes people.
He's just writing people.
Yeah.
And right now, this is a girl scared by a bunch of dead voices coming out of the drain, which, let's talk about that for a second. There are dead voices coming out of her drain. That would freak me the fuck out.
That would freak me the fuck out.
Dead voices coming out of her drain, one of which she recognizes, and then she starts
Veronica?
doing that then she starts doing that rationalization thing where she's like trying to figure out, could it be somebody in this apartment? No, there's no kids there. Could it be somebody in this apartment? No,
I loved that part. Thank you for pointing that out.
That is exactly what I would do in that situation. And then the thing starts.
But there are no little kids that age in the I like that she works through the whole thing. She's like, no, this is fucked up. Like she works through it. I love that.
Yeah. No.
And at no point is it about her. It's about this creepy ass thing happening in her bathroom. If you really want to hear Stephen King's version of what it's like to get your period, read Carrie. That's all I have to say.
And I have. And all I was going with it was playing back to what he did with the other, the other boys, the other children. He played on their number one fear, or a fear that they had deep, or an upfront fear. And so that's just kind of where I brought the note up. I'm not saying it is absolutely what it was. It was just something
I see what you're going with.
And again, yeah, my brain going to shows written by men and everything. So I'm not disagreeing with you.
I definitely see the
whatsoever.
pattern. I don't think it applies here.
Fair.
On
that's
that
all-
one specifically.
And that's all I was saying.
I think if we think about the thing she fears the most, I don't know if she could put words to the thing she fears the most because
no,
the
because
thing
she doesn't
fears-
fucking know it.
Well, the thing she fears the most is the thing she loves the most.
Yep.
It's
Exactly.
her dad. And trying to find the balance between the love and the fear, it's really hard. It probably won't be able to use that against her. So he uses something else.
It's more of a humanistic thing that it uses against her. It's more of these
Empathy.
are helpless. Yeah, it's playing on her empathy. These are helpless things that are already dead. You know, at least one of these things has no chance to defend itself, but that doesn't mean you don't want to try.
Yeah.
So where do we go from here?
So I had one more note really with the family or couple, but just a quick one. See, Al Marsh is definitely the reason you don't trust somebody who never drinks. At least on the men's side. He's like, I have no vices. I don't drink. I don't smoke.
He's going to live to 101 years
I'm
old.
110.
110.
I'm going to live to 110, and I got my women here, and they're going to take care. And it's like, yeah, but you're a prick, and you're disgusting, and this and that, so it's kind of, it's an old joke that I have. If I know you don't drink at all, unless you have an actual reason for that, like past history.
I have, celiac disease, or I'm a known alcoholic.
Yeah,
like,
okay, but if not, if you don't have a drink once in a while, I'm not going to trust you because
I can't
I would say the non-alcoholic doesn't fit because the alcoholic actually has had drinks in the past.
well, yeah, that's what they don't count.
They still fit your mold.
Yes.
Of I don't trust somebody who doesn't drink. Oh, they do. They just have
Can't.
finished.
Or they just can't.
I would trust an alcoholic that doesn't over someone who never has.
Exactly.
Kind of
True.
Is that fair? Like,
However, I would not trust a practicing alcoholic.
No.
never.
No. Functioning?
Leave
Maybe.
me out. Leave me out of this.
Yeah, kidding.
Mostly a joke.
Drink
I
responsibly.
Mostly a
wouldn't
joke.
speak to any of my brothers again.
So can we talk about? Can we talk about not that? Can we talk about
Love you.
the entire idea of has he ever touched you?
Yeah.
Yeah.
That was a huge thing that I don't think Beverly clearly
No.
she has no idea what that question meant. She
Which is
said,
good.
He
Yeah.
touches me every day. I don't understand the question. She says that, like not
Well,
specifically that, but she
She
says
said it in her head. She thinks
right,
it.
right, yeah. And what we have is her as the narrator at that point.
Well, yeah.
And she says, well, he touches me every day. I don't know what that means, kind of thing.
Yeah.
And so does that mean that she's never been sexually abused, or does that mean she has
It's
always
so
been
normal.
made to be used to that? Is that normal? What are your thoughts?
I think, no, she has not been sexually abused. I think maybe in her father's mentality to, down the line,
I have all the women I need here.
Exactly. Like, it's not unlikely that he could be possible to want to do it, but I don't think she's actually ever had it happen. When she thinks of, has he ever touched you? She thinks of, he's hit me, he slapped me, he's, knocked me around. Also, really quick with that, how quick Bev's mother jumped from, oh, has he ever touched you? And just left and just cut it off.
Melissa, thoughts on that?
So I agree with Benji that I don't think he's done that to her. One, because she didn't really know what mom meant. And I think as a mom, you ask that question, you watch your daughter react.
Test the waters.
If I had asked my kid that and I got the reaction I saw that Bev gave, I would too have walked away. Because that was enough answer.
There was no tell.
As soon as you see that reaction, that confused look on the kid's face, you can't fake that. And if you know your kid well enough, you'll be able to see that look of like, wait, what? As soon as you see that, you're like, okay, I'm good. Bev's mom didn't need any more. She believed her.
Yeah, no, and that makes sense now thinking back on it. I was more thinking of the adults' propensity to overlook shit. Hence the blood and just all the bad shit that goes on in general in the town. So that's where my brain went, where she was like, you know what, forget it, never mind, and just moved on. I went to that side, but now that you say that, that actually does make absolute sense.
I was
honestly, as a mom and a teacher, like that's that sixth sense that you can't explain and you can't teach anybody. When a kid answers you, 95% of the time, I can tell if they're lying. I don't always know what the truth is, but I know if they're lying.
I was definitely on the side of, even though Bev's mom might know that she's physically abused, I think that's pretty clear that she's honest about that. Like, hey, if you upset your dad, you're going to wake the blue devil, is what she says. And so she knows that if Al Marsh is overly, if he sees red, basically, he's furious, he's going to hit you. And I think the mom's abused. I think she knows, her being the mom, knows that Beverly is abused.
I also think the other thing is, we're talking about 1958. Corporal punishment was not frowned upon. Like, that was
entirely different, yeah.
And a reasonable type of discipline. And I think Al's version of it was over the top and horrible. I think he's doing it in a way that he thinks aligns with what corporal punishment should be, even though it's way beyond just a spanking or a swatting. It's everything. It's full on abuse. And I mean, today, spanking, swatting, all of that is considered corporal punishment. And that's, worthy of a visit from DFS. But back then that wasn't. And I think he just takes it 4 steps too far. I don't agree with it. I'm not condoning it. I'm just saying it's a different time period. So we have to keep that in mind.
Yeah. Al Marsh basically takes it as, well, this is acceptable. And he's just at like the top rung of what's acceptable at that point. And that point, in 1958, is entirely different than what it is.
And I'd even
60 years later now.
Yeah. And I'd even say in 1958, the swat on the butt she got, the smack on the arm she got. Okay. That was acceptable, even in somewhat of today's standards. Maybe not that hard hit on the arm to leave a bruise.
Not to leave a bruise.
But you know what I'm saying? Like a quick, but the punch to the gut, that's where it crossed the line.
That was, I will say, I agree that was like this is clearly way over the line from anything that's acceptable nowadays, for sure.
Yeah, and it's not the first time, obviously not the first time he's done it, because, I worry about you, Bev, which is still one of the creepiest lines. It is a very and again, going to a different medium of this, but it's a very creepy line when otherwise performed. Even in this instance too.
That's something I picked up on. Like the way we're not even this far in this chapter. Like, I feel like we're gonna go pretty long on this chapter. But I feel like so much happens in this chapter, and I think that's okay. Him saying that, because quickly, like instantly, when she screams in the bathroom, he says, "Is someone peeping on you?" Like he quickly goes to a sexual mind state, of, is someone looking at you through the window? And then he quickly, after she somewhat calms down, says, what was the line?
I worry about you, Bev.
I worry about you so much.
Yeah.
And he goes on and on about that. It stood out to me as being very weird.
The line that bothered me the most, yes, I worry about you, is bad. But the line where he says daughters need more correction than sons.
I picked up on that one too.
Oh yeah.
I got heated about that because, first of all, my dad is the nicest man in the whole wide world. And
overly nice sometimes.
Overly nice. And I was his little girl. He would never. He'd be more likely to hit one of you boys. Let's be honest. You all deserved it. So
he'd more likely to offer the threat of hitting one of us. Right. He would never hit anybody. I mean,
like, it was never even.
By the time you,
I got the threat.
You got the threat because me and Matthew had our other brother.
I saw you guys fuck up over and over and over.
Yeah, we trained him.
Yeah, I would wrestle your asses to the ground. It was awesome.
Yeah, until
he wrestled them.
Yeah.
He wouldn't.
Yeah,
he didn't want to fight me.
Yeah, there was only a few times where it was some sort of corporal punishment, and in fairness, I deserved pretty much all of them.
And I think that's good parenting. You actually realizing it, but Bev thinks that she deserves it because she's been learned to realize that's what she deserves for her outright doing the wrong thing.
So my point in saying that is, look at Al sort of perpetuating that men are better than women thing in Beverly's mind by saying that daughters need this more. My other thought is, dude, you need a son then, because see what kind of shit he's going to give you. I guarantee you it's going to be worse.
let's move on to the next scene.
Yeah.
Let's get into actual young Bev. Is that fair?
Okay.
Well,
Or
young
final thoughts.
loser Bev.
Let's
Loser
talk
Bev.
about the invisible blood.
Loser Bev.
Well, invisible blood.
Invisible blood.
I think it plays just theory on it. I think it plays into, like I said before, the whole adults just ignore, or it's ingrained. And I think it's honestly Pennywise, him using his magic, his abilities to, I'm coming for children. I want children, and so I'm going to show this to children kind of thing. And since the losers had already had experience with it, they, can see what Bev saw. Luke?
I have a lot of thoughts about this. I know last chapter, I clearly made the change of perspective of, there's magic or some kind of imagination or some kind of, you can't explain this in natural settings. There's paranormal or extraordinary things going on. And
Welcome to Stephen King.
Right. And until this point, like I said, last chapter, like you can somewhat justify it in some way. It's stretching things, but we're way past that now. And I loved that in the fucking prologue, in his dedication, he says this outright. He says, you know what? Fuck it. This is magic. Don't try to figure it out. This is what it is. I love it. And as a first time reader.
So you're welcome.
As a first time reader, I am all in. I mean, clearly we're 9+ chapters in.
And we got a long way to go.
And I love where we're at. I have no fucking clue what's going on.
Nice.
And I like that. I like not knowing because the options have opened up. And the invisible blood underneath Al Marsh's fingernails and how well it's described is brilliant. It's fucking brilliant. And Bev is so baffled with, and us, the reader, the first time reader, is so baffled by how is he not seeing this? How is she seeing this? And moving on through the chapter, everyone else seeing it, it's disconcerting in how the adults are so left out of the issue. It's clearly like, oh, there's maybe 7 people that would actually be able to figure it out, because as we figured out, like in the next scene, Bradley, the kid that is bitching about her cheating and calls her mother a whore and
Bradley
all that.
Donovan.
Bradley Donovan. I don't think we ever have his last name at this point, but that's fine.
No, it was in the chapter.
Either way,
I did the summary. So
the kid that went to a speech impediment class with
your mom's a Beth.
with Bill, clearly he's left out, and we have a line. I'm jumping around a little bit, but we have a very specific line where Bev realizes that Stan, when he finally jumps into the fray, he's more real than Bradley is. He is part of the group. And then I think this is kind of what us as a team have been talking about, something that I haven't necessarily picked up on, but something is calling this group together. Mm-hmm. And I don't think it's that explicit, but the group realizes it. Yeah. These characters realize it. And I like that. Melissa, thoughts on all of this?
Maybe Bradley's a ghost.
Yeah, he's an asshole. That's for sure.
I don't. Well, he is kind of
asshole.
But again, see, I'm telling you, I had a lens when reading this chapter. I read it, the whole Bradley scene, and it was girls or cheaters. I'm like, it was like, again, going off on girls, and I was like, I can't even. And he's a cunt. Yeah, like I can't even with this chapter, with all of the different misogynistic points of view, can't Beverly just like be a person and not just be seen by all these men through a lens of you're a girl?
And she's the fucking best.
She's amazing.
That's what we see. We see that she is the best. She lost one of the pitching game, but girls are fucking cheaters, and your mom's a fucking. But you're a bitch, and your mom's a fucking whore.
But
my mom's a waitress. My mom's a waitress.
My mom's not a whore. She's a waitress.
And I love that it's Eddie that they talk about right when they just like start losing their shit. Like,
he's a pansy.
He's a pansy.
He's a wuss.
He's a wuss. And it's Eddie and Ben that just fucking start cracking up.
Well, let's just talk about how innocent she is at that moment. How, like, it really just shows how young they are.
Yeah.
She's not a whore. She's a waitress. Like, yeah. I don't know what you mean. And I didn't take it as an adult. Like, she's not working as a whore. She's like a little kid who didn't even know what that word meant, but she's a this. Yeah. It was so cute and so sweet and so wholesome in that moment.
See,
I really felt for her.
No, I did too. My takeaway with it was more so with Ben, because I do kind of relate to the fat boy. Not necessarily
the Ben relationship.
Well, a little bit.
I relate to the Ben side of it for sure.
But it kind of comes from the fat boy, from the guy who was in love with the girl who you never thought, but you would do anything, even to find her honor, And you go chase down the skinny fucking slur or whatever his speech impediment was, chase this guy down, but then you realize, he's gonna outrun me. But I made an attempt, and I made an attempt to defend her honor and everything. And so Bev, she did nothing wrong, and she was awesome. She was cool, and Ben saw that, and Ben wanted to defend that.
Bev saw that,
and Bev saw that as well.
Yeah, that enough. It's something. It's something to. Even when you're 11 years old, no matter what that means or whatever, it's a motivator. It's something that you can look back on saying, oh, she cared about the thing that I did for her. And it wasn't him being selfish in doing that. It clearly says that whenever he stood up to Bradley, Ben has nothing to lose at this point. There's no fucking thing that Bradley can do that Ben hasn't done.
Bradley.
Right. There's nothing that Ben hasn't done to Henry Bowers that he can't do to Bradley. Yeah. So there is nothing that Bradley can do to scare him at this point. And I like this change in character for Ben. Ben with confidence is dangerous.
Oh yeah.
And I love it. Give Ben confidence. This is the most dangerous thing you can give someone with talent.
Yeah.
That's how I feel about it.
That makes me think Ben with confidence is dangerous as like Eric Cartman with follow through. I know you don't watch South Park, but basically we get that character the last season. It was hilarious. So it's kind of the same thing. Eric Cartman with follow through, Ben with confidence.
You give someone with talent confidence, it's a dangerous thing. Ben has a lot of talent.
All right, so we're going to move on, and Beverly starts telling the boys about the blood in the bathroom.
Yes. Well, first, before we get to that, Stan showed up. Do we want to talk about, how when Stan showed up, he fit. Even though
there was more there.
It was more there. Even though Beverly's never really hung out with Stan, because I don't think he was there last week or the other day when they were all down in the Barrens. He was at his Jewish away camp or whatever.
That's right.
And, so he wasn't there, but as soon as he got there, they felt like he was more there than Bradley was. So I thought that was interesting that she felt that from that moment on their not first meeting, because they probably knew each other, but their first hangout.
First interaction with this summer.
Yeah.
So that was saying something of just in that quick, instance. And then he was the one that said, let's go see it. When she told him about, what she had saw, I believe he was the one who said, let's go see.
I think that was Ben that was the one that kind of made the decision, like, well, let's go check it out. But either way, the fact that Stan was the one that instantly Bev deemed as in the group,
exactly.
That was definitely something I picked up on. And no matter who it was that said, hey, let's go, I don't think that matters, but our group is set. And we saw that in chapter 3. Like, that was clearly
not quite, but almost,
including Mike. Which we
haven't met yet.
Yeah,
I was gonna say, I'm still confused on. I'm still confused on, and I don't know how he interacts with the group, but I know the overall Losers Club is set.
I do agree with you. He does show signs of that OCD mentality of it has to be in order, has to be, it should be this way. Maybe not full blown OCD, but it needs to be in order, and this just isn't right. This isn't, kind of...
It's not kosher.
Not kosher, exactly.
Which was a funny joke. That was a funny line.
That was a great line, yeah.
Even though even though he didn't even know what that meant necessarily.
I like that he's referred to as, like, his fussiness.
Yeah.
And I think that's a better way to describe them, maybe like OCD. And part of me is like, oh, I wonder if it's like an anxiety thing. Like I have to have it just so. And I don't think so. I think maybe he's just
anal retentive on maybe a certain level, but the spectrum.
No.
I
just think there are certain people that because I don't get like an autistic vibe from him.
I knew that's where you were going to take it. Sorry. I just meant on the anal retentive spectrum,
I don't even think it's that because he doesn't come off as somebody who can't tell a joke and can't have fun. I think it just comes off as somebody who like that's just sort of his personality. He's just sort of fussy and orderly. And I don't think there needs to be a label for it necessarily because it doesn't affect him adversely. It makes him in a very dweeby way kind of cool that there is somebody who, as an 11-year-old, knows to do laundry and knows to take care of those things. Because, like, I feel like I know kids like that, and they're normal kids who just happen to be more orderly than your typical kid. So then we go off into Bev's house. I love that they say, well, let's go look at it, that the boys are matter of fact about we need to see it and see if we can see it too.
I feel like it's Ben specifically that says, well, let's go look at it. I got a commander moment from Ben. I'm sorry that I cut you off, but I feel like I got a commander moment from Ben, which we see in older Ben, his future career. And then it's him that touches the blood. He says, I see it here, here, and here, to show that Beverly's not crazy. She's not making this up. And he gets that. And he moved deftly for a fat boy. It's something that, it's a good scene for Ben. It's hard not to be a Ben fan. I feel like all three of us are Ben fans. It's hard not to be. Because he's such
best name there is.
Not even just a good name.
Although true.
He's so delicate.
Well, it's a good name.
He's so delicate and deft and perceptive about kind about other people's feelings. I mean, that's like the main thing that he goes for is there's a point where it says he wanted to go in for the hug to comfort her, but she was the pretty girl, so he couldn't. But regardless of that, like,
he wasn't hugging her because she was a pretty girl. He was hugging her because there's a person who needed a hug.
Yep.
Right, but he held back because he couldn't be that guy. But he realized
boy part.
He realized that hug needed to happen.
Right.
But he didn't do it. Either way, his perception of that was good. And viewing the perception of this chapter, it did mostly go on Bev, and then there was a brief moment when it switched to Ben, and then there was a long portion where it switched to Stan.
Yeah.
But I like getting Ben's narration, even if it's just a little bit, because I feel like that really is like the every person. He's just so decent. I don't know. Yeah. What do you guys think?
With Ben, there's, apart from him being fat, there's nothing really broken.
Apart from Bill having a stutter, there's nothing broken.
No, the brother thing. I'm talking, Bill has, lost his brother. His mother and father have shut him out. There's brokenness in Bill. Before all Pennywise and all that, there was nothing broken in Bill. But Ben, even after Pennywise, there's nothing really broken apart from just, he's a fat kid. That his mother loves him too much and tries to do, overcompensate by feeding him.
He has no self-confidence.
Yeah, self-confidence. But there's nothing, that is obviously such as with Beverly and Eddie, and I mean Richie is the closest one to Ben. Richie and Ben are the closest.
And Stan's not broken.
Yeah, you're
right.
Stan's
family. Let's get there. Let's get there soon.
Yeah,
His
let's go there
fucking
now.
Decent.
Yeah, and all I'm going with it is Ben really is, like you said, the everyman. And I think Ben and Richie, because we were talking about this last chapter where Richie was the one who brought everybody together, like kind of reached out. Ben has that empathy. They both are showing that true sign of empathy that, you don't see from Bill or Eddie or Bev. And I'm not saying you don't see it. It just hasn't been shown up to this point. You see it from them because they're truly decent people, but they're not broken, and they don't have a reason to not have the empathy for the other people.
So we finish with Stan. They finish cleaning the towels. Bev goes back home. Any thoughts about her ending scene there in the bathroom?
The scene with Bev at the end and the tape measure is troubling. Yeah. I don't know what to think about it. Last chapter, I decided everything's free fucking game. That doesn't mean it's easy to figure out what's going on. And Beverly being so scared of not only what she's seeing and experiencing, but the effect that that's going to have on her personally is sad.
I really liked this last scene because I think it kind of goes with what you were saying about her doing something. There's not an immediate threat to her, but she's very much doing something. Let's find out. Let's see. And then something happens and yeah, she gets scared and there's the nasty chuckling burp from the drain, but she can face it now.
My kind of takeaway with that last scene was it was her testing to see if what she experienced was real. You know, beyond somebody just confirming that I have a second experience, you know, going on. And so I did enjoy that scene. It was kind of it was a nice little creepy. Because
it was scary, but validating.
Exactly.
I have like one more thought on this. Like overall chapter, I think. This reminded me a lot of the mention we had in an earlier chapter in the interlude with Mike, where he was talking to one of the old timers.
Yeah.
And that old timer's daughter had been killed.
Mm-hmm.
I didn't go back and check and see if it was the same name.
Yeah.
I think it probably was.
I think you're right.
And it was I heard my daughter's voice in the drain. Yep. She was down there in the drain with the gurgling sounds. She was laughing. And I feel like that was exactly the same thing that we heard here.
I'm going to say you're pretty much absolutely right. And I remembered and I couldn't guarantee.
The laughing. She was laughing.
Well, it wasn't the laughing, but I rember that scene and I knew from previously reading this scene was coming.
We mentioned before before Bev realizes, hey, Veronica, there are two other names that she throws out there before. That's one of the names we hear before.
Yeah.
And down the drain, it just fits so easily. It's the sound of the soap going down the drain is how I was
the
expressed.
Flushing,
No, that was something that stuck with me when I heard it in the first interlude chapter. And
thank you for bringing that up because I had to bite my tongue back then because again I knew this was coming, and so no, I'm glad you picked up on that because
I did.
It was one, you know, on my first couple read throughs I never really I kind of caught it, but then when we started doing this podcast, doing the slow read and really focusing on each chapter by chapter, you know, that was one that really stuck out to me because I'm like, wait a second, that sounds a lot like
it's a very similar chapter.
Yeah, that's coming up.
So on page 378, the voices that Beverly hears the first time, here's what they say. I'm Matthew. I'm Betty. I'm Veronica. We're down here with the clown and the creature and the mummy and the werewolf and you, Beverly. We're down here with you and we float. We change. Over on page 148, he is talking to one of the old timers whose daughter's name was Betty Ripsum.
Yeah, it was.
So,
Feel good about that.
We're going to get into our questions for the first time reader. I only have one. So, Luke, are you ready?
I'm ready, I think.
This is your last chance. Can you tell us just how much do you love Ben Hanscom?
Just how much do I love Ben Hanscom? The love that he got was disappointing. Because I feel like we've seen the exact same efforts that he's expounded on the other side, and seeing the perception of the effort that he puts forth is disappointing. It's saddening, and it makes me want to question my entire life in general.
Wow, that went dark.
No, it doesn't. Ben's a good guy. Be a good guy. It's always the right choice. Ben, good guy. So what was the actual question?
We're going to get into our section of My Favorite Thing, where we list either our favorite line, our favorite scene, or favorite whatever comes up with. Benji, we're going to start with you. What was your favorite thing in this episode?
Your mother's a whore. My mother's not a whore, she's a waitress. Just
That was my hysterical.
sorry, dude. Yeah, no, that one, it just great line, great delivery and everything, and yeah, no, it was just great scenes all around. Everybody just, and then just them not even realizing Beverly was just, everybody cracked up because she was like, my mother's not a whore, she's a waitress. Yeah.
The fact that they just lost their shit,
Yeah.
like that was so funny. Like Eddie was like, I think the last one mentioned, like it's just hysterical. He's like, oh, is that what she is?
All right. So my favorite thing was the actual description of what happened with the tape measure. I really liked the way he wrote that. So I'm going to read that paragraph. She ran out 6 feet, 7, 9, and suddenly the tape began to run through her hands by itself, as if something down there was pulling the other end. Not just pulling it, running with it. She stared at the flowing tape, her eyes wide, her mouth sagging of fear. Fear, yes, but not surprise. Hadn't she known? Hadn't she known something like this was going to happen? The tape ran out to its final stop, 18 feet, and even 6 yards. A soft chuckle came wafting out of the drain, followed by a low whisper that was almost reproachful. Beverly, 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 you can't fight us. You'll die if you try. Die if you try. Die if you try, Beverly, Beverly. It's so good and so creepy and so exactly what you don't want to have happen.
Yeah.
And Stephen King is at his finest when he is making you live through the moment with them.
The uncomfortableness is the best part. I mean, that's what this entire book is. It's being exposed to uncomfortableness. That's
And
what I'm
his
getting out of it.
language. Like his language, not just pulling it, running with it.
Yeah.
The idea of somebody just, because I can picture it, I can see it.
She was so hesitant, even like every single part of that.
So that was my favorite. How about you, Luke?
My favorite thing this chapter was Stan telling us his experience. Stan, I think, was the MVP of this chapter to me. Bev was incredible. Stan, for who we've learned that he is, I think he kind of earned his stripes this chapter by just showing, the experience that he had. I don't like that he's hesitated to share what he's gone through, but he did share it, and that's what matters. So it is that entire scene of him basically paying his admittance to the Losers Club. That's my favorite thing this chapter.
That wraps us up for this particular episode. If you have questions, comments, or would like to continue the conversation about Chapter 9, you can find us on social media, on Twitter at floatsdownhere. You can email us at floatsdownhere@gmail.com. You can find us on Facebook as well. We have a website called thepodcastthat.com where we have this show plus our other shows, the podcast that must not be named and the podcast that drinks and knows things. You can subscribe and rate us on iTunes. It really helps us out if you leave us a comment and give us a rating there on iTunes. We are on Spotify. You can find us there at that time too. Join us next time for the following chapter.
Derry, the second interlude.
You'll float too.
Stay imaginary.
Thanks.
That's fucking complicated.